Welcome to Dark Loops Productions and the What If crew, a podcast for discussing the new Marvel series, What If? I'm your host, Dr. Scott Jordan, aka Zombie Scotty, cognitive psychologist, philosopher from Illinois State University. And tonight we discuss episode 9, the season finale, What If the Watcher Broke His Oath? Fellow members of the What If crew, please introduce yourselves and say a little something about who you are, and we will start with Stanford.
Hello, I'm Dr. Stanford Carpenter. I'm a cultural anthropologist coming to you out of Chicago.
You know, I'm so shocked that you didn't say, and I'm the game winner from week to week. I really thought you would start rubbing that in as soon as we got on air, but that's okay.
Well, you know, I mean,
You just assumed everybody knew. You just assumed everybody knew already.
Just knows exactly.
And I'm known for my modesty.
Yeah. I'm glad we're starting on humor tonight. And how about you, Daniel?
Yes, I'm the pop mythologist, a pop culture blogger at popmythology.com.
And now for our special guests. First, we have the one, the only Dr. Billy coming at you out of sunny San Diego. Billy, please say hi and tell the audience a little something about who you are, as well as who or what is your alias or superhero identity.
Hey, Dark Loopians, it's me, Dr. Billy. I'm the king of kayfabe, Mr. Magic himself. I may not be coming to you live, but I make you feel alive coming out of sunny San Diego. I am a therapist, writer, raconteur, and you can find me in your dreams.
There you go. So glad you're on the show here today. And now for our next special guest, backed by popular demand, grief counselor extraordinaire and soon-to-be Dr. Brittani Oliver Sillas Navarro. Brittani, welcome back to the show. Tell us a little something about who you are and whether or not you may have changed your alias.
Yeah, my alias is still Wanda for sure. Grief counselor, like you said. I specialize in the TAY population, which is transitional age youth, so 18 to 25, and currently at Alliant finishing my doctorate.
Oh, fantastic. So as per What If protocol, we now move on to our game, What If? And we have our very own pop mythologist, Daniel Jun Kim, to run the game for us. So Daniel, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, at this point, I am just going to launch right into it, not re-explain the rules all over again. At this point, I'm sure people are familiar. Let me just start the screen here. Okay, so this week's question was, what if during Vision Ultron's multiverse rampage, Earth 19999, aka the main MCU universe that fans know and love, had gotten destroyed? So I realized when I put out this question to the players that it might have been kind of confusing, and wanted to clarify that when I say the main MCU universe, I just meant basically the characters and the Earth that we know of from the movies leading up to Avengers Endgame. Of course, with like Loki and now What If, now that the multiverse is part of the MCU, right? I didn't mean the whole multiverse gets destroyed. I meant that what we used to know as the MCU as being basically limited to this one Earth, which is now just one of many. So I was talking about that Earth, that universe. It's confusing again because Marvel calls it Earth number blah blah blah, you know, but it's that universe that contained Steve Rogers and Tony Stark, played by Robert Downey Jr. Blah blah blah. All those people are dead. Okay,
I think Daniel got a little mad because my first answer was an audio file of just nothing but white noise, and
right, implying just like there's nothing left. But I meant like no. The rest of the universe is, you know, they matter. They're out there still. So and no, I wasn't mad, Scott. I was just
okay. I'm sorry.
Okay, so as per usual, I'm gonna just quickly go through these answers anonymously. Answer number 1 says, since the writers have made the bold choice of letting the main MCU get destroyed by Vision Ultron, Disney has no choice but to stick to this creative decision. And we, the audience, no longer see any more films and shows about the heroes we've come to know and love. Instead, all future films and shows are about the guardians of the multiverse, Captain Carter, T'Challa the Star-Lord, and so on. Fans will cry, protest, and revolt, but for some of us, the sheer audacity of such a creative decision makes us love every minute of it. So his answer kind of approaches the question from a sort of meta perspective of what would happen in our real world, which actually is one of the Earth. I can't remember which number it is, but it's actually part of the Marvel multiverse. We just don't have any superheroes. That's all. All right, answer number 2 says, I mean, why not run off to the next cooler and better version? Better universe version, I suppose. We hear there is no planet B, but here's a perfect opportunity to say, smell you later. Let's go somewhere where there's a buttload of sunshine and margaritas in between cataclysmic events. Maybe even purple giraffes this time. Yeah, that would be a universe.
I'm in.
We all know Scott loves purple giraffes, so
absolutely.
Yeah,
the margaritas
clearly his answer.
Isn't a bad idea either.
Answer number 3: Ultron Vision destroys Earth 19999. The Avengers try to stop him, but can't. In a desperate effort to save the remnants of humanity, Doctor Strange uses the most and this is, I'm presuming, the Doctor Strange from the mainline MCU, not the messed up Doctor Strange in this episode. Doctor Strange uses the most forbidden of magics to send Tony Stark to another universe to warn him. Tony finds himself in a Backstreet Boys music video. Universe Strange sends Tony to is the music video for Larger Than Life, the song in which the Backstreet Boys are in a futuristic world. To be precise, January 1st, the year 3000 AC, as per the video, singing about how their fans are the source of their power. Tony enlists their help, re-enters the Earth 19999 realm by harmonizing at just the right frequency such that the very time-space continuum ruptures. Brian uses his hovering surfboard to distract Ultron, while Howie, I'm assuming these are Backstreet Boys singers, I wouldn't know.
You can't do that, man. You can't you can't.
That's what someone who would
disqualify
write
yourself
this
as
would
the
say.
author.
While Howie uses weird heat suit thing to melt the metal that holds the Infinity Stones. Because ain't nobody hotter than Howie. Nick uses his robotic armor to hold down Ultron, while AJ taps into his programming using the interface cables from the video. The stones are freed and Tony snatches them up, but oh no, the resulting blast of cosmic energy from their violent removal causes a shock wave that hurls everyone into space. But wait, here comes Keith Richardson flying the spaceship he uses in the video. He rescues them all and they return to the decimated Earth. They mourn the loss of an entire planet. Tell me why, they scream in agony to a god of apathy and disgust. But Tony has an idea. They put on a concert and use the revenue to rebuild all of Earth. Everyone rejoices, dance break. Parentheses, this answer would not make sense to anyone who has not seen the fantastic music video for Larger Than Life, but that's really more their problem than mine. All right,
Well
answer
done.
number 4. Ooh, I like these short ones. Iron Man, starring Tom Cruise, coming Christmas 2022. So I take that to mean like basically we're getting a different universe as Iron Man. This one will be played by Tom Cruise. The Watcher throws a party. Clearly he's into comedy. So basically I'm imagining the Watcher saying, yeah, I don't have to, one less universe to have to watch over. Okay, so that's answer number 5. That is all the answers. Just do a super quick review so you can all remember which answer is which. Now is the time to write down your guesses for who wrote which answer. It's answer number 1. It's answer number 2. Purple giraffes. Answer number 3 with the Backstreet Boys. Again, I don't know who they are, but answer number 4, a new Iron Man. And answer number 5, Watcher throws a party. All right, raise your hands so I know when you're ready so I can proceed to the next step.
Could you show me number 2 again, please?
Sure.
I got to remind myself of what I wrote just to make sure.
Oh, he's going meta on the meta.
Yeah.
Just like Daniel, I don't know who the Backstreet Boys are. Sounds exactly like someone who would write that.
Exactly. Yeah.
This one's
What
tough.
is the truth? There's just no way to know.
I thought I like knew, and then the last 2 came out. Now I'm like confused.
Yeah.
The short ones are tricky, yeah, because there's not enough clues in there. Not enough clues.
I mean, my take on it is the Backstreet Boys has to be done by somebody who's been around for it.
Or funny. That's
Or
why it's
someone who likes the
Billy.
Backstreet Boys.
That's why it's Billy.
I'm more of an NSYNC guy.
Same.
98 degrees.
Okay. So, all right, let's proceed to the guesses now, or the people's answers. I'm going to start with our regular guests, or excuse me, our regular co-panelists. So the guests get a chance to see how people give their answers. Scott, why don't you go first, please?
Okay, I'm going to go 1 Stanford, 2 Daniel, 3 Billy, 4 Brittany, and 5 Scott.
It's so different.
Okay. So please, Stanford, would you go next?
I'm going to do 1 Billy, 2 Brittany, 3 Scott, 4 Stanford, 5 Daniel.
Okay. Okay, Brittany, would you give us your guesses, please?
I have 1 Scott, 2 Brittany, 3 Billy, 4 Stanford, 5 Daniel.
Okay. And Billy.
As not one of the regular guests, as one of the irregular guests, before we begin, I'd like to recommend Metamucil for
Oh my
irregularity.
God.
There you go.
So don't ask me why I had that at my desk. I'm going to go 1 Daniel, 2 Brittany, 3 me, 4 Stanford, 5 Scott.
Ooh, I'm so curious.
Oh,
I think
wow.
I know
Okay.
who the winner is.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to first reveal the winner, and then I'm going to actually go back and just quickly reveal the actual answers. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have our first time ever all answer correct.
Dude,
So
Billy smoked it, didn't he?
it is indeed Billy. Billy is the first person ever
hate
to get
this
every
game.
answer correct. And
I
it's his
hate
first
this game.
time. It's his first time playing the game. He gets every answer correct. Holy crap.
Oh, man.
I hate this game.
You know, Brittany, I've known Billy for as long as I've known Billy, I've hated him.
I didn't think Stanford would stay quiet for long.
All right. So
Damn.
He had a pretty sus look from the very beginning when he first came up on screen. There's definitely something going on. That thing with the Metamucil.
yeah, something
Distraction.
going on.
He had the exact same, but the 1st and 5th, and I was like, oh, one of us is right.
Mm,
So it was 100% completely game theory. People want to win, so they're going to guess themselves for the one they wrote to give themselves an easy point.
Sure.
By going last, I kept track of who guessed themselves for which answer.
So you cheated. So
You
I
cheated. You
it.
just admitted to cheating. You're supposed
I
to
used
write
the
your
logic.
answers
Wait a minute.
down.
You're not supposed to
Wait,
change
you
your
just admitted
answers.
to
You're not
cheating.
supposed to
You're
change your
supposed to write
answers.
your answers down.
Oh, are you not supposed to change your
No,
answers?
you-
Yeah.
Game
Okay.
this. Thank you.
All right. Hold up.
Billy, I
Scott
wish you
explains
had said that, man. I was looking forward to you having 5. Oh, and
Now,
Stanford
didn't
never
I
get
just
that.
say that there was something suspect about Billy? I mean,
Yes. Yes.
was I wrong?
No, you are not.
All right.
We can edit all of that part out.
No,
5-0.
let's just do this. Let's just do
Hey.
2 winners. So obviously Billy's a winner, right?
For cheating?
No,
Yeah.
we'll just stay with it, and then we'll see who of the other 3 got the highest score.
Because I'm old school. If you get caught cheating, you lose.
I'm new school. If you get caught cheating, you run for politics.
That's right, man.
Yeah.
You run for office.
You run for office.
There you go. So I say we go through these and we just find a winner out of the other. So we'll have 2 winners. The game
Well,
theory
okay.
winner.
Billy cannot win.
I accept the victory. We can move on with the panel now. You're all welcome.
All right. So the next winner then in that case would be Brittany.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Or you might say the real winner.
By pure guessing, not by logistics.
Yeah. Or changing your answers.
So you're telling me that Stanford
Mid-game.
still didn't win?
Not this time, I'm afraid.
No. What he's really articulating is the fact that Stanford is so magnanimous that he would give the guests a chance.
Aww.
Yeah. Yes. We'll just say yes. So how many did she get?
3.
Well, she got 3. She got
That's
3.
fantastic.
So-
That's fantastic.
So all the correct answers is answer number 1 is me.
Yeah.
Answer number 2 is Brittany. Answer number 3 is Billy.
Yeah.
Answer number 4 is Stanford, and answer number 5 is Scott.
Yep. Okay. Fair
So
enough.
I'm going to.
Well, thanks everyone for playing. Daniel, as always, thanks for organizing. I love this 2-winner vibe. And Brittany, congratulations. So what we're going to do now is
Not Billy.
The
I'm
real
the victor.
congratulations.
I'm the victor in the viewers' hearts.
I think I got 2. And the reason I got 2 is because obviously I got 1 for myself. But Billy, that I could tell you wrote that, man.
Oh, 100%.
I just could tell you wrote
100%.
this. So very well.
Yeah, we need a
done.
recount. It's all illegitimate. It's rigged.
There-
Hanging
It's also the same man who asked me what my favorite Pokemon was on a job interview. I was like, this is Billy's humor.
There you go. So then what we're going to do now is just jump into the episode, favorite scene, favorite character, favorite line. And let's also be open. I think some people may not have liked some of the things that happened in this episode. So feel free to also say what you didn't care for. Floor is open.
I just appreciated the chance to get to see some of the characters that I enjoyed seeing so much the first time around, namely Star-Lord, the T'Challa version, Captain Carter. It was cool seeing them again.
Mhm. I love the animation. I at some point, man, go do what you want with the plot, but I just loved. They really put everything they could into giving it a cinematic vibe, and then I'm a huge animation nut, and I just loved every bit of it. Plot wise, I got concerns, but other than that, go ahead, man.
Well, it has like the most obvious issue, which is that like, you know, there's an infinite number of versions of everything, and that's the team you choose.
Right.
I mean, at that point, you just find the universe with the thing that defeats that guy, and you're just like, we'll just have 8 of those on the team. Boom.
Yeah, no. Billy, Brittany.
I loved how I'm a sucker for a good over arc. And you could see seeds of the arc from the very first episode. And the fact that they could close that arc while resolving the mini arcs for each episode, I thought was absolutely fantastic. Like if they supercut all of it into a 2-hour movie, I would go see it in the cinemas.
Yeah. Last time in the last podcast, we talked about jokingly, how do you tell a story in the multiverse, right? You end up telling stories differently because you're not necessarily supposed to have connective narrative threads between this story. It's more like an anthology. So on the one hand, this final bring them all together through the Watcher thing, maybe should have been obvious, and I have to admit it wasn't obvious to me that they were going to have the Watcher go pick all the stars and bring them all together. So I was a little disappointed in myself. I didn't see that coming, and I dug it when I saw it. And then I thought, now, is there a multiverse way of telling a story here? Did I experience it differently as a story because these anthology bits then came to, you know what I'm saying? I mean, there was no direct narrative connection between most of them. They were just different stories that came together. And I didn't feel like I really experienced a whole different story. It was a same old story, but different chapters. And I'll shut up because I'm rambling.
Yeah, but I think that there's the last 2 episodes specifically were helpful because it gave some closure. Because I think in the other pieces, it was so hyper focused, in which what happens in the Marvel universe in general is here's, Black Widow's story, here is Iron Man's story, here is, and they somehow intertwine in some ways. But this was a lot of the characters interacting. And so the last two episodes are really, and specifically the last one, was helpful to see them evolve as characters in a team setting as opposed to individually. Because individually you can see if they're good, bad, whatever you want to call it, because you see their point of view. As opposed to this, it's how do I exist on a team structure? How do I exist? What's my role in this setting? And that was like one of the disappointing things for me for like the Killmonger's story.
Right.
Which was a letdown. It was just kind of like a bummer. It's like, someone was gonna sell somebody out, but like, could it have been someone different? Like, I don't know. And I think about like culture and everything else. And so I think that the team setting, team building kind of heroes in this sort of placement, like it gave a unique opportunity to say, or to show, how do we exist together simultaneously as opposed to like by ourselves.
Yeah.
I was kind of struck by, in terms of the story and in terms of looking at it in relationship to the way the Marvel universe has evolved, that it would have worked even if there was no multiverse. And I say that because when you look at, especially when you look at the Marvel universe and even the development of the one universe that we're most familiar with, right, is that they by putting them each in individual, you have individual stories and then they all get together in Avengers, and each of those stories are like complete world building units. So it was odd to me, and very intriguing that, like, I did not feel like it was really about a multiverse. I felt like I didn't feel like bringing them together was that much different than when they all came together the first time to fight Loki, or when they came back together the first time to fight Ultron, because, and I guess it brings out something I've been fascinated about superheroes is that I've always felt like the super and hero was always an ode to genre, because superheroes tend to be very hybrid in terms of their each one is a hero and right, So Thor is the mythological hero. Iron Man is the tech hero, right? And they each have but like when I saw this come together in a multiversal construct, I was like, I didn't feel like the multiverse necessarily made it that much different, because it was still ultimately these different heroes just coming together. I felt like the moment that the one meta moment that stuck out to me the most was when Black Widow was talking to the Watcher and was like, "Oh, so we're just stories to you. What did you did you break out popcorn while my world was being destroyed?"
Oh, that was my favorite line. Did you make popcorn while Ultron murdered my friends and burned my world to the ground? That was actually my favorite line. Yeah.
And that goes deep in. Oh, sorry.
No, please.
Well, and not to tangent away from that, but to piggyback off of that scene and that comment, it gets so meta in terms of not only us as the audience, but deep into religious and philosophical themes. If there is an overarching omnipresent, omnipotent being, does that being watch over us when we go through hardships, just eating popcorn,
Snap. I mean, both of you on target. For me, I think what happened is basically we got to see the Avengers over with different characters. And the reason is because, as you said, Brittany, you got these individual narratives and then you bring them together and see what fleshes out differently when they put them on a team. And I'm all for that. I mean, that's kind of how the Marvel universe has been built. You have heroes of, Hell's Kitchen, heroes of Earth, heroes of the universe, heroes of the multiverse, and you keep having a big baddie, and you do, but the dynamics are basically the same. And that is a bunch of individuals who then try to come together. And that's why last week, I was complaining a little bit about them humanizing the Watcher, because if they hadn't humanized the Watcher, then maybe they can start to tell a little bit of what I would call a post-human story, right? Where the things our values and things aren't things that really matter at a different level. And it's not just nihilist, it's something different. And I'm asking for stuff, but I know what kind of stories Disney writes, so I'm not mad or anything like that. But there were opportunities to make us deal along the lines you're talking, Billy, about something different, some reframe of what it means to be a human being, not just, well, I'll shut up there. I'll stop.
Necessarily think it would. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, Billy, please.
Oh, I don't know if it would necessarily be nihilistic, because they also show I agree with you that it's not nihilistic, because it's the values are important for the people within the story. But it would almost be, I'm trying to come up with a good word for it, almost universally, well, that's also the word nihilistic, just in different words, which is probably why, Daniel, though I appreciate it, you should have taken the floor, because I'm not quite sure what I'm saying.
No, that's fair enough. That's me 100% of the time. So maybe I'll bring in another sort of thing to ponder or talk about, which I thought was kind of interesting, because yes, on one hand, what Stanford was saying, I think it is true in that it was a multiverse on the surface, structurally, with the way the series worked out, stuff like that. But in terms of the story, it's kind of largely unnecessary. And in a lot of ways, these characters could have existed within one universe if they just kind of worked out their circumstances correctly, and then had them all come together in the same way. But because it is formally a multiverse, something that I found interesting while watching this episode was, in a way, how arguably you have here a kind of a B-level series that a lot of MCU fans might not even watch necessarily, or they won't prioritize it anyway above like shows like WandaVision or Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But it's and here in this sort of animated series, something kind of arguably more important than Avengers Endgame happened, which is not just one universe was saved, the multiverse was saved, which includes the Avengers Endgame universe. And it also, according to Marvel canon, includes our universe, because our universe is Earth number whatever. It's one of the universes in the Marvel multiverse. So that was interesting, I thought. And that's why I kind of came up with that question of, wouldn't it be kind of interesting if Disney just did away with, it's never going to happen, but made this really bold move, said, you know what, okay, the MCU you knew with, like Chris Pratt and all these actors, Robert Downey Jr., they're all dead. We're going to have a totally different.
But we kind of already know what happens when you do that. That's what DC Comics did with the first Crisis on Infinite Earths. And all that happened is you end up just starting over and recreating everything, and very much the same stuff from scratch as an appeal to a combination of nostalgia and capitalist desires.
But it happened in the comics. In the comics, I'm talking about MCU level. That's a whole different level. Like, I
think it still would have been the same. They're still going to come back with. No,
but I mean the audience reaction, because the MCU, what the movies have done is bring all kinds of people into this audience that were not reading Crisis on Infinite Earths or any of the sort of reboots in the comics all these previous decades. MCU is this completely different phenomenon, not in terms of storytelling, in terms of the pop culture phenomenon that it is. It's on a whole different level in the comics.
But I think I think like socially, especially as people who are novice or don't necessarily like really go behind the brand, like as somebody who like I always watch these MCU's movies. I thought it was interesting and fun, but through my like kind of dedication to this, like through Billy and everything else, like I've learned so much more. I've invested so much more time in the comics. I've invested so much more time in backstory and everything else. And the perfect example is on my previous show of going on about, if Doctor Strange, lost his heart versus, lost his heart versus hand. If I was never introduced to it, I would have never known the difference. Like I would have just been like, oh, this is completely plausible story. The background is that they lose somebody and they become heroes, blah, 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 blah. And so I think it would be just as marketable, especially for the novice crew. I think that novice people who aren't extraordinarily, like into it or invested, they would still be like, oh, this is exciting and something that I can go watch. Whereas people who are kind of like diehard fans, yeah, you're going to have message boards where people are upset and frustrated and yada, yada. But it would allow them the opportunity to explore a different reality in which they've been based. So it
And
would
we've
give
also
them, huh?
no, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Like it would give them a chance, and this is exactly what the show is doing, like the what if show of what if, like what if there was something different? What if there was a different possibility? What if we hear something different? And to your point, Daniel, of being like, if this all went away, we would all hunker down into whatever the new narrative is, like completely pleased or irritated about it, but we would
Right.
all get behind it because it's a new story, it's a new narrative, and it's possibly interesting, and so I don't
And,
know, maybe challenge you.
and we have seen this before, not just in Crisis on Infinite Earths, but with Spider-Man. Right? We had the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, we had the Garfield Spider-Man, and now I think that in some ways there are a lot of people in Hollywood that would love to do that, because then they could tell the story without having to worry about the stuff that came beforehand, right? I don't know. I feel like at a certain point, I think we're also coming back to an element of human cultures, which is their cyclical nature, right? Let's go back to the whole Twilight of the Gods story, right? The whole myth of Thor really only takes place over the course of a year, and it just keeps happening over and over and over and over again, right? It starts with his mother, who's goddess of the spring, and she, it's their whole mythological storyline is all about just retelling a year. I think that one of the things that is interesting, and that this series did, is I don't think they meant to do it, but they kind of drove home the extent to which something as big as the multiverse is really just a small detail within the story structure. And that's what I was getting at, what I was trying to get at earlier. That I'm like, oh, it is such a small detail, because the bigger story structure is heroes from different worlds, metaphorically or literally, right, get together to fight something bigger than themselves. And whether those different worlds are defined by different areas on the same planet or different universes, that's kind of what we're working with.
So I totally agree with what you're saying there, and I would say that heroes of context, or as you've sent in the past, constituents. In other words, Daredevil has his constituency, Jessica Jones has hers, Luke Cage his, and we have notes being passed during class, and they're rather funny, right? And we're not going to share them with the audience. But so for me, if you look at, like Daniel's point about, it would be bold if they went ahead and let that MCU die off, and then took these people and they became the new heroes in the story. It would continue what I think the MCU started. I mean, I've said this a couple of times, I'll say it again, but what we saw over Iron Man was a deconstruction of the white billionaire, right? From beginning to end. And within that deconstruction, we saw the emergence of different heroes of different contexts. And it would be bold, it would be brave of MCU to take on the mantle of, we are the ones who introduce new cultural context into pop culture, at our pace, in our way, for sure. But I think that's more their mission than what I'm after, is this post-human story. So for example, Galactus comes along, right? Because Galactus feeds on galaxies and worlds, and we think that's horrible. I would like to hear Galacticus' story. Is it like he's really malevolent, or is he just hungry, like as Stanford said, when I eat some food, am I malevolent about eating it? Or so I'd love to see that examination. But I think Disney's got this vibe right now. If we're going to introduce heroes from different contexts into your pop culture world, and we're going to make sure we keep making money. I mean, look, they did write a redemption arc for Strange into this thing, right? I mean, Strange destroyed a universe and they built a redemption arc into it. And no one said anything like, dude, aren't you the one? You know, nothing like that. It just kind of went away and he became kind of a hero again, right? So, yeah, I'll shut up.
Well, no, I
No,
think
you're
redemption.
I think you're making an excellent point, and going outside of the actual show, and I'm sorry to do so, but I'm
It's all good.
curious culturally if these moves are done because they genuinely want to know more about stories, or if they're being pushed by social constructs of what is appropriate right now.
Yeah.
And so we're going to look at these characters that maybe have less spotlight, just because like we want to advance people's understanding of like the MCU and like get more connected to characters, or if it is this, well, we're pressured to do something that isn't a white guy
Right. Yeah.
to tell their story. So I'm it's kind of like one of those like, is this authentic or not, or inauthentic, and does it matter? And that's kind of like the business, the yucky side of the MCU. So I don't know, like it's an interesting kind of intersection to kind of figure out of, are people wanting to explore these stories for the good? Are people wanting to explore these stories kind of like in an exploitative way? And either way doesn't matter because we get the stories.
Well, I guarantee you they have business charts with the good versus the cash, right? And they share those with each other when they're coming up with what narratives they want to start, right? They're doing cost benefit ratio just because it costs so much money to make these things, and they definitely want to make money. I have a quick question.
Necessarily.
Go ahead, Billy.
Oh, I don't think it's necessarily a dichotomy either.
Right.
You know, you can tell good stories with a social message and still make money off of it. A good story will sell. Good characters will sell.
Right.
The fact that they're showing a more diverse cast is both, you know, for the social good, but it also pulls in a demographic that's not necessarily targeted.
Exactly. It creates new audiences. And
exactly.
If they're creating a multiverse, no pun intended, but a pun intended, if they're creating a multiverse fandom, multi-diverse fandom, and young people are getting used to watching these types of movies and thinking about themselves this way in relation to others, that's a huge achievement, straight up. And you know, that's honestly one of the reasons I'm doing so much in pop culture right now, because it's doing some of the most progressive work in this area. So I'm totally in. I have a quick question for everyone.
Well, the nice thing about it too is that like I've been fortunate enough to have like a superhero therapy pop culture group in my practice right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's explosive. Like there's so many opportunities to talk about everything.
Yep.
Like it's evasive. Like it's like I asked some of my group members, and it was just like, what is something that you want to talk about? And someone said, I want to talk about Mad Max because of how like human psychology goes, and I want to talk about Harry Potter about grief and loss, and I want to do Twilight about like relationships and healthy ones. And it is everywhere, and it's such a wonderful way to connect people. And it sounds like this like cheesy soapbox, but like truly, regardless if it is The Simpsons or, you know, something in the DC universe, like it is very, very evasive and people get it. And it's kind of cool that here's this medium that has been shown to us that has been really helpful. That's
Well,
my
that's
soapbox.
Yeah.
I'll get off of it.
No, I see. Well, that's exactly why I started my blog, Pop Mythology. I never wanted it to be just an average pop culture blog that approached pop culture on the surface level, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just talking about geeky stuff and geeking out is totally fine. But for me, the power of it and what I'm interested in is using it to talk about difficult or complex topics that might not otherwise be appealing topics. Like, for example, one of my sort of pet topic areas right now currently, just because of what's going on, is like the decline of our American democracy, right? It's a difficult topic, it's unpleasant, it's disturbing. People don't want to talk about it, and I've tried. But when I say, okay, let's talk about The Handmaid's Tale, people are like, oh yeah, and I'm like, okay, here's a way in, you know, here's a
Yes.
way to talk about it.
Yes, because we are living in the prequel.
Yeah.
Well, stories have always served as a mirror for society. And when we have a society and a cultural construct where everybody is the hero of their own story, be it tragic or triumphant or somewhere in between, we can relate to those characters. There's a lot of people who relate to the what if Doctor Strange's feeling of having destroyed his entire universe because of hubris. There's people who, really connect with Black Widow losing a good friend, her best friend, and feeling alone in a world filled with death and destruction. And there's people who relate to Thor being a party boy and just wanting to have fun and having to grow up, whether or not he wanted to.
Yep.
And if we trace that back all the way back to the Iliad and the Odyssey and the tales told around campfires when we were still evolving, these are the things, and these are the themes, and these are the arcs that tell our story, not just in this generation, but throughout humanity. And it's the same story. We overcome hardship and we triumph.
Or we'd like to believe so. We have this romanticized notion that good always wins, even though we know that it doesn't, and that people can be triumphant despite the fact that in your lifetime you'll lose. You'll lose
absolutely
a relationship, you'll lose a job, you'll lose I don't know, friends, family, whatever. Like, we know that people will lose despite the fact that.
But the stories, the power of the story is that it helps us to I'll be honest. I mean, I came into cultural anthropology because of my fascination with stories, and in particular, this idea that stories are often the things that get us through the night, right? Stories are the things that allow us to literally fill in the void. They allow us to make new connections between the things that we do see in front of us in order to see a new way out. And to you, Brittani, I would say that what the story does is it recontextualizes the loss.
Yeah.
And in that recontextualization, it allows us to turn that moment of loss into a triumph. It even turns death into a new possibility. It turns, death, in the story, death is not in the stories, death is not meaningless. There's nothing meaningless about Tony Stark's death because he saves the universe, right? And I think that it's that perpetual recontextualization where we really start to see the power of the story, right? I look at superheroes as I've often talked about my fascination with superheroes as power fantasies, right? But they're not. But what I think is really interesting about them mechanically is ultimately they are our modern mythology, and they're like the perfect mythology for a hyper-capitalist society, because what you have is a commodified mythological construct, and what pushes it forward in a society that values money over most things, or over, I would say, all things, is that it allows you to perpetually generate money by generating more story. So there's actually like a regenerative urge in that, right? I think that there's also something else within that is the power of comic book superheroes, and it's tied to even how we've restructured our laws, which is that they appeal to us because these are heroes that never die.
Yeah.
They never die, and they never, and in the end, they nenever let us down. And I
Yeah.
say that they never let us down because they're always like no matter, I've always said that the in talking about representation of race is that the character that is offensive today can be transcendent tomorrow because they're being rebooted and reimagined all the time, right? And it's that we've created this perfect cycle of this hurtling towards nihilism that actually puts you to a point of complete and total regeneration, which just allows for the story to capture everybody in every mood, in every moment of their life.
Well, we romanticize it in a way of, here are these people in how we celebrate celebrity. Here are these people who are not untouchable by any means, but we don't think about them pooping and drinking water during the day. It's it is.
I mean, I do.
But for the heroes, we're thinking about them as this extraordinary person or type of person who's impervious, and they get forgiveness, and when they err because of some unique way, and it's romanticized. It's so we are so in love with it, and I think that goes back to celebrity culture. But I love all the things that you're saying, because I'm sitting here thinking about, if I'm going to build a character that is invaluable to criticism, essentially. And it's not that they won't get criticized, it's that they always show up, like you were saying. They always meet our expectations, they always do the thing that we want them to do. This What If show is one of the unique perspectives in which someone could fail us. Because again, going back to that Doctor Strange episode, he failed our expectation of him choosing the right path of let it go, move on, don't deal with your grief, blah, 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 don't let it consume you. And here's this person who still had this story, and Scott, kind of to what you're saying, he still had a story that was able to get him out of the narrative in which he was a bad person.
Well, I think going off of both what you guys are saying, and to also throw back to what Scott had said earlier, I don't know if it's so much nihilistic as it is existential. And the reason I say that is...
No, go ahead.
The reason I say that is, in all of these stories, there are points where a choice can be made, and the choice, whether someone makes that choice for selfish reasons or non-selfish reasons, and we could even debate on what selfish is, it sets a point for the story to jump off of. Yeah. There was very much a chance for Doctor Strange, the what if Doctor Strange, to say, I'm not going to help you because you didn't help me. You didn't intervene. And I think what we're seeing as a cop-out, as a way for this person who destroyed his universe to finally get a happy ending, I would consider that a moment of character growth. He was in his tiny pocket dimension, realized the errors of his ways, and was given a chance to redeem himself, which is part of the hero's arc, is making that choice. And instead of enveloping himself in that grief, which he did the entire Doctor Strange episode, letting the grief control him, he thought, okay, I'll help you out now.
So
and
go ahead.
In terms of, a quote unquote happy ending, just to finish up, in terms of a quote unquote happy ending, his happy ending was he's still stuck in that universe, and now he has a responsibility as well. Yeah. He didn't get her back. The universe didn't, reconvene and recreate. he's been given a responsibility.
I don't disagree. I thought the way they ended the Strange episode was extremely bold. And that's not nihilism. That's simply the fact that things sometimes don't work out. Sometimes salvation doesn't come. Sometimes, I'm forgetting the word right now, but no, your story ends. And it's not that I want it to. I thought it was just a brilliant counterpoint to a lot of our expectations. And I got to tell you, the final scene, that whimper, when that universe collapses, is stunning. Yeah. And gotcha Demerung, man, that stuff happens. Things end. So I liked it, and I liked it. You know what I mean when I say I like it, right? It's not like I want the world to be that way. It's just if we're going to tell stories, there's many types of stories to tell. And yeah,
I'll pull us back to the actual episode. So I'm wanting to know like what everyone's thoughts were about Killmonger kind of being the person that throws everybody under the bus.
Rubbish. But we said that when we did the last Killmonger episode. The Watcher even introduces him as, so-and-so, a killer. It's like, okay, you got to retell us that he's the bad guy right now. So that we weren't very happy with what they did to Killmonger in that previous episode, villainizing him. So
I think I think that's a big part of what I find interesting about Killmonger's character. I mean, I was at an event last weekend, and there's somebody who was one of the people helping to run the event, and and she's walking around, and she's just walking around with a t-shirt that says Killmonger was right. I think what I find really interesting about the development and handling of that character is the extent to which I feel like I'm looking at the anxieties of the writers in that they are like, I feel like I felt like in Black Panther, and I felt like in his What If episode, and I even felt like in this episode, is that they created a character that was supposed to be a villain that is so compelling that they have to find ways to write that he's bad. Like they have to like I feel like I just always feel like the writers are going out of their way to convince us that we should not like this character, which I think speaks to something really compelling that he taps that they didn't mean for him to tap.
Yeah, it's kind of like, and I was saying this when we were on that episode when we were talking about it, but I feel like whether consciously or not, it's a way of discrediting the whole package, right? Because if you can sort of find a reason to present him as villainous, then in like the minds of many American viewers, like, oh, whew, I was starting to get nervous with some of that stuff that kind of sounded like it made sense, but no, he's a bad guy, so we can just like,
exactly.
Yeah.
To be honest, I couldn't believe they did what they did in What If to Killmonger. I thought, were they just careless? Did they not get what happened in Black Panther? And they just, or is it more intentional, like Stanford said, that they wanted to sort of make sure everybody knew that Disney or whoever thought that Killmonger was the villain? But I was kind of shocked, I'll be honest.
So, I'm going to disagree with everyone.
Episode, yeah, well, with respect to this episode, I was just going to say it is consistent with the Killmonger we saw in that previous What If episode. I didn't like it, but then it is. I did feel it was consistent with that. It just makes it double bad. Yeah. I mean, I was doubly annoyed, but I did feel like it was consistent with that character, which I didn't like. But again, yeah.
What are you going to say, Billy?
Oh, I'm going to disagree with everyone.
Do it.
I kind of. And I'm sure I'm going to get jumped on. I liked the direction that Killmonger took in this episode, because at the core of it, what makes each of these heroes is there's a core there that no matter who dons the cape, who dons the armor, who wields the sword, there is a basic characteristic to them. And for Killmonger, I believe that it was, the ends justifies the means, because the end
Sure.
goal is always a good end goal.
Sure.
And at the end, when he collects the Infinity Stones, he goes, hey, we could repair our worlds with these. Now, whether it's driven by a lust for power or a lust to do good, I think it's a character that has a place in this universe.
Yeah.
He,
I just don't know that it has
like,
to be that character, right? I mean, what that character did in Black Panther was important for this culture to see, right? They worked so hard to craft, as Daniel was saying, this incredibly reasonable argument about the history of colonialism, right? And so the character for me is much more nuanced than the kind of decisions that they were making him make in this show. So I agree with you that there's a thing he's got. For me, this character has to be a little more nuanced. That was my vibe. That's all.
So it's more so the insidious nature of it rather than
right. I mean,
okay.
once he gets off Earth, is he really gonna? Is that context independent aspect of who he is, and he's gonna do that all the time, or is it? Go ahead, man.
I think what's interesting is nobody talks about, and they always, and they're skirting this in the narrative, is that what happens when Killmonger wins, right? I don't necessarily think that if you're gonna, and you have to ask this of every character, right? What happens if every one of the characters wins and is in control of everything? I don't think that Killmonger is going to be the worst person to be in control. His climb to the top was I would argue his climb to the top was not as brutal as Tony Stark's. He was an arms dealer. Right? I mean, and so if you start looking, and when I look at these heroes, I'm like, yeah, there's a lot to be redeemed in many of them, I would argue that like there's a lot to be redeemed in Killmonger, but I'm not sure that there's more to be redeemed in Killmonger than there was in Tony Stark or a whole bunch of other characters that we see as heroes. So what I think is interesting is that to the extent that Killmonger has a journey, all in all the stories which Killmonger is featured, they feature him at a point in the journey where like things are not necessarily set in stone. Okay, so Killmonger, I know that sounds harsh, but so Killmonger kills Black Panther, right? Black Panther killed people along the way to get to where he was. We're just seeing it, and so, and those people had relatives too. I mean, there's an element to the Black Panther story that is about a very brutal, ruling court drama, right? This is how we select our king.
This goes back into, like, regardless if we're talking about soldiers, even from the US, like, how do we actually see what's justified or not? And I think that if we see you as a person in a heroic role, it is justified and good and makes sense and noble. And so if it's Black Panther, it's all of these things, but if it's Killmonger, it is him being vicious and plotting and just being a bad person. And so in the last episode for Killmonger, for him to kind of like think, regardless if it's self-serving or something else, it is, of course you would be that type of person because you're a bad type of person, as opposed to, no, like you're doing these things because you feel like that genuinely is the best choice. Like we get to decide, and I tell my clients all the time, I was like, our brains are powerful. We choose what is the correct narrative, or what's the narrative that we believe in the moment. And so if we believe that Killmonger is a bad guy and he's always going to make bad decisions, that's the lens in which we watch him. If we believe that he is noble and able to, I don't know, resurrect some of his like past, I don't even know. Like at that point, if he's in a different multiverse, like he hasn't even made the transgression. So it's like we're hating him based off of this like transference thing.
But I don't think when I see the Killmonger in What If, I'm not hating him. If anything, I consider him a tragic hero because he played his part in defeating Vision Ultron, but then he couldn't get out of his own way. Because his argument wasn't we could rule the multiverse. His argument wasn't we could be kings and queens. His argument was we can use these stones to repair our universes. So, you know, there are aspects to Killmonger that I think are still heroic. And I think it's the matter of his missight into how he wants to go about being a hero.
No, I don't disagree. And as a matter of fact, I think we're very much in agreement. What I'm asking is that they handled that character with a bit more care than I felt they did in the episode where he killed Stark. I mean, that his main episode, and then this one. Yeah, I just wish they had handled the character with a bit more nuance. Then, okay, let's put him in the same position. Now he's, instead of Wakanda, now he's got the stones, and well, he does the same thing. Because what that's doing for me is kind of diluting the important message he taught the culture in Black Panther, right? So that should have been, for me, the way they contextualize his next decision. You know, are you going to make the same type of decision in a different context, or, you know, when there are different stakes in place and it's not revenge anymore for you? I don't know, that because when they treated him like a villain, they just collapsed the complexity of that story. And plus, one other thing I want to say is, one thing I'm guilty of with everything I'm saying here is assuming that this story's over. And it could very well be the case that there is more to come. And so if there's more to come, I'll retract all my concerns later when I see it. But always open to more story.
For his character in like specifically, I think about why him. Why not another character? Like, why not someone else? Like, and it's not even necessarily like it transcends like race or culture or something like that. So it's truly, we continue to have these heroes stay as a hero, and people who are on the border, then we can see them as good, bad, neutral, or something else. Doctor Strange isn't necessarily someone who is a hero. He's not Captain America. He's not Thor. He's not Iron Man. And so we can then see him as like in this juxtaposition of good, bad, something else. And for Killmonger's character, it was like, why was he the easy person to throw kind of under the bus? And it's just very curious to me of, like, why do we make these choices? And if it was, I don't know, Thor who made the same choice, would it have been different? And for audiences,
there is a character that's making the same choices, right? It's Loki.
Yeah.
Loki is doing everything by guile, and Killmonger is doing almost everything by guile. Yet we embrace Loki as a villain who could be a hero, an anti-hero, a trickster, right? And somehow Killmonger is controversial, right? Yeah. And I think I do think it's beyond a racial component. I actually do think it's what Killmonger is linked to. Killmonger is linked to something that threatens to overturn the very basis of these corporate universes, which is he is the most anti-capitalist of all of the characters in the MCU right now. I mean, look, you know, it's like, what is Loki trying to get? Loki is ultimately trying to get things for him. He's trying to heal his own wounds, right? Whereas Killmonger is like, I'm going to war because there's this huge system that's keeping all of these people in this very terrible situation, and I'm gonna tear it down. And if you get in my way, yes, I will kill you, right? But that's kind of what Loki's saying, except for it's like, if you get it, you know, I'm all about dealing with these emotional issues, and if you get in my way, I will kill you, right? And I think it's really interesting that, like, and not surprising when I really think about it, that in our society, to do heinous things in the name of our own individual emotional needs, that's okay because it supports individualism. Everything about what Killmonger is doing is about elevating it's very much about elevating the collective. Even in his most problematic moments, there's a vision of a collective for which individuals are not important. And that actually ties into some of the most heinous acts he commits, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we discussed that episode and we did the what if game, my simulation was that eventually Fury would ask him to join the Avengers, because Fury would have seen the talent this young man has. He would have led him on an arc of what we might want to call redemption, just like he did for all these other broken human beings he found who had powers, and put him on this space with all these different people. And if they had built that into this story, you know, then it's Killmonger struggled to be part of this group that, you know, he may have been fighting in different ways. And that's the space for more nuanced aspects of his character to get stretched and pulled, you know. But I got another question for you guys. Oh, Daniel, go ahead. Dan, you say what you, and then I got a question for you.
Yeah. Then again, it is still the MCU, which does represent, you know, like Killmonger is someone that like white liberals would be uncomfortable with, right? So he gets to the very core of American anxiety, and so it's as we express all these concerns and issues, frustrations, ultimately it's like, well, of course they would do it because it's still Disney, it's still MCU, it's still this, you know, multi-million-dollar business and hyper-capitalist industry, and of course, ultimately, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a foregone conclusion.
So I want to know if the answer to this question is obvious. I apologize. Where was Captain Marvel?
Oh yeah, because she's part of this
Where is Captain Marvel? They're fighting for the multiverse.
Well, that's one of the things that I was thinking of this episode was that I thought it was fun as long as you don't ask questions or think too hard, because there were so many moments, and some of us pointed at this earlier, but there are so many moments I'm like, what? You know, like when Ultron's like, I could kill galaxies with a single thought. And I'm like, well, why don't you?
Yeah. So another quick question then. There's a scene where Doctor Strange is getting ready to big encounter with Ultron, and there's it looks like a universe or a planet, something blows up, and then it looks like Strange grabs it and puts it in his mouth. I backed that up. What was he doing?
He was eating the energy, just like he was eating the energy of the dark forces. Sure. Yeah.
And then I loved how at the end he spent that energy to bring Cthulhu out, basically, and have Cthulhu sort of fight. I loved all those references. And when they animated him doing that with all of the different beasts he had consumed kind of expressed in his visage at that moment, I love animation. I loved all of that. And that's one of the things I loved about that Strange episode, was just all the different energy sources he had to consume to become that sorcerer.
And for the Dark Loops viewers out there who are fighting to get Cthulhu out, Metamucil.
Anywho, it was kind of cool in the episode too, if you think about it, is every single shot, frame for frame, not just the 11th and 12th episode, you get to see all of his shadow like images have the other entities. And so it's never his silhouette by himself. It is pieces of people or things that he's absorbed. So it's kind of cool to see that this is the character, or this is the entity that we see of Doctor Strange that is not Doctor Strange. It is
very well said. Very well said. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And we'll see if they use this stuff, right? If they take it further, if they do a what if season 2, or if they somehow eke this stuff into the movies. I'm not sure. Any other burning questions, comments regarding the finale of What If?
What about how the missing episode tied into the plot?
I think you stumped me with that question, because
So there was with Gamora and Tony Stark being chosen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there was a missing episode that got cut because of production delays due to COVID. So there was an entire missing episode where Tony and Gamora, the episode was Tony didn't make it through the wormhole at the end of the first Avengers, and he finds himself on what's the Jeff Goldblum planet again? Sakaar.
Yeah. And then
So
the whole because I read somewhere where the big part about that was supposed to be what if Gamora killed Thanos?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it would have tied a lot of things better together, I think. The Infinity Stone Crusher allegedly came from that missing episode. So there's some speculation they're going to show that episode in season 2.
Oh, that's fantastic. I thought what I dug about that bit that they did show us was the Watcher says, "No, not you, Stark." I thought that was pretty funny. And after that, what they did was they wanted Gamora, and they kind of sealed off my need for backstory just because of the Stark diss, and then they took her. But you're right, there's a whole story there, and yes, that is my dog barking in the background. His name, by the way, is Zuko.
Nice.
Is that not the coolest dog name ever? It was ever going to be Zuko or Bowie. So my kids decided on Zuko, which is very cool. He is a cursed fire prince. Any other burning questions, comments about? He's mad I'm talking about him now, but I can't mute at the moment, so we'll just leave it in. Anyone else? Final comments, questions about the season, the episode? And we'll do an after party episode where we can really hash out the whole thing. But
I did want to mention in terms of whether or not we knew at the beginning that this would become an arc over episodes. My first hint, I picked up on it and I wasn't sure, and then by the last couple episodes, I was pretty certain, was the Watcher the Watcher started as an ephemeral being. You didn't even see, all you see is an outline or his eyes. But then he starts getting slowly more and more visible, more tangible, and less ephemeral. And I thought there had to be a reason they were doing that. And sure enough, it gets to the point where the Watcher becomes a physical being that engaged in fights.
Yeah.
My question is a little meta on that. There's a comment in the episode where Strange goes, "You knew this is how it would all play out." So, and I always have this issue with kind of that plot device.
I love it.
If you knew this was how it would all play out, did you also know that you would have to fight, and why were you so surprised when Vision Ultron showed up if you knew he would show up?
But then when that just reminds me of the Loki. I feel like we're getting so meta. Like that reminds me of the Loki series and talking about like the Time Watch. Like I've gotten to this point and then I don't know. Like I have so much insight. I have so much understanding of like the process of this experience. I know what's going to happen, whatever. But until now, it's the shock of until now. Like, so I could see the future, I could see the past, I could see, all these things, but there is a splinter in some way where I don't have the knowledge of knowing where to go. And that was kind of like the only thing I can think about of like the last minute was, where do we see this person's role? Like, where do we see this omnipotent being? Like, are they good, bad, neutral, or something else? Like, are they, is he an important or fundamental piece? If he was left out of this entire thing, this entire series, would it have changed anything?
No,
the whole, that moment where they're like, I can't remember which character it was, even though Billy just said it, was like, you knew this would happen. I honestly don't even think they thought it through. I think they just felt like it was a profound thing to say, like, oh, that sounds really cool. Like he knew it all, because it really doesn't make sense.
Well, I think this is the problem with writing two things: time travel, and also with writing characters that are they're not bound by linear time. And I think that the few times when it's done well actually further highlights the problems of even incorporating them into stories with linear beings. So like one show that I thought actually kind of started to deal with it pretty well, and also in the novels was Deep Space Nine, is this whole issue where you have these prophets, which are basically aliens who are outside of time, and like there's just certain concepts that you lose when you take linearity out of the picture. One of which is death. Like death ceases to be because that requires a hyperlinearity, right? A beginning, middle, and an end. So yeah, I was kind of like when they said that, I just in my mind I just had to ignore it, because I was like,
I always find myself a little annoyed with characters like the Watcher, because Stanford, you've commented every time, you've made the statement many times, a story is a promise. And when you bring this type of what I'll call post-human being, non-human being into a narrative, I'm being promised I'm going to see something different. And what happened is, you're absolutely right, Billy. As they started to bring him into the story, how did they do it? They brought him in an increasingly human way. So as he got into the story, he became more human. And then they got stuck oscillating between his omnipotence versus his humanness. And I would kind of prefer not to see that. My friends here have heard me say many times, I like my gods to be gods. I don't like them to be humanized. Loki is an embodiment of chaos, and that's what I want to see when I'm with Loki. But we'll see what they do with Kang, right? I mean, Kang's a human character, that's true, but it's obvious I'm always looking for something non-human, something. How do you tell a story, like without time? So for example, one story that I think rocks this vibe is the TV show The Expanse. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see The Expanse, but they are doing some amazing stuff with different beings, different ways of being that totally defy any notion of morality, and playing with time a little bit, I'd say. And it's about the best I've seen it done visually, other than maybe Arrival.
Yeah, I was just going to say Arrival. The no non-linearity thing, I thought the Arrival did it really well.
Right.
Just rock. And you transformed your being by being part of their language. I just thought that was stunningly well done. But so any other final comments or concerns about the show? All right, then give me just a second here, and I'll take us out.
Oh, you're gonna take us out, but we're your friends.
He's gonna take us out like Metamucil.
I can't with you.
I knew you would get in one
with
more.
you.
I said he's gonna do
I
it
was
one
about
last
to
time.
be like, finally, we get to go to Chez Expensive.
Oh my God. Billy, I'm gonna call myself the big Metamucil from here.
Nothing gets
Billy
more
right
meta
now.
than the
So
power
over him.
There you go.
of psyllium husk.
So that about wraps it up for tonight's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Brittany and Billy, thank you so much for being here. We had such a good time. What if crew members, please tell the audience where they can find you on social media, and we will start with Stanford.
Yes, you can find me on Facebook, Clubhouse, Twitter, and TikTok at SW Carpenter.
And before I ask Daniel to give out identifying social media information, I just want to thank you for running the game for the whole season. It was an absolute blast and something to look forward to, even if I never won. So Daniel, where can people find you on social media?
Yes, popmythology.com, and on Facebook and Twitter at popmythology.
Excellent. How about you, Billy?
If you're looking for the king of kayfabe, if you're looking to sling a game with Mr. Magic himself, you can find him on Instagram and Twitter at BILLI_SENSE. That's Billy Sense on Twitter and Instagram.
Thank
Or
you so
at
much.
Metamucil.
Every time you take Metamucil, I want you to think of me.
Okay, so when I post this episode, I am going to hashtag Metamucil. Just-
Totally. Do it.
All right, how about you, Brittany?
I am on Instagram at Be Therapeutic, as in Bumble. So BE Therapeutic on Instagram.
Fantastic, and thank you for being here again as well. It's total blast. You can find me on Twitter at dark_loops. You can find all episodes of the What If Crew at the Dark Loops Productions channel on YouTube. If you'd like to leave feedback about this podcast, please do so on this YouTube page or send a message to darkloopsproductions@gmail.com, and we'll be sure to read it at the end of our next podcast. So there it is, from all of us to all of you. Big hugs, and remember,
We are the Watchers.
Bye-bye.